رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن سهلا إذا شئت آمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
All right, so inshallah, today is our last day of review slash discussions that we've missed, that we had to make up and stuff like that. So, and then inshallah from Friday, we could start from the second half of 30th Para from Surah Al-Fajr, inshallah. So just a quick recap of what we discussed a couple of days ago on Friday. We discussed, as for the miscellaneous, let's just get through that first because inshallah it'll be pretty quick. We discussed the principle of تقديم ما حقه التأخير يفيد الحصر. The principle of when you, in terms of the i'rab, in terms of the grammar, in terms of the sentence structure, when a word is brought forward, then the normal place in which it is usually, that gives the fa'idah, gives the benefit of hasr. For example, I think I had said inna lil muttaqina mafazan, whereas we know the ism of inna is going to be mansub, which is mafazan, so it should be inna mafazan lil muttaqin. But Allah Ta'ala is highlighting that true success is solely for the muttaqin in the hereafter. Additionally, we have the example of lisa'yiha radiya in Surah Al-Ghashiyah, that due to the individuals, their efforts that they made towards doing good deeds, towards gaining a reward and doing things that Allah Ta'ala likes, it is due to those things, لِسَعْيِهَا رَاضِيَةٌ. It is only due to those actions which allow them to benefit in the akhirah, only those a'mal will cause them to be radi, will cause them to be happy and to be pleased. Okay, so that's تقديم ما حقه التأخير يفيد الحصر. The usage of madi for future events is for لتحقق الوقوع. لتحقق الوقوع. So to show the certainty of those actions occurring. As we know, the past tense is also called the perfect tense. Why? Because those actions have occurred and they have completed, and we know that they have passed, and we know that they've happened. So Allah Ta'ala will use the madi sigha, the past tense sigha, to express that certain future events, like the ahwal of the Day of Judgment, will certainly come to pass. وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاءُ فَكَانَتْ أَبْوَابًا, that the skies shall be opened up. We translate it even in the future tense, but literally we would translate it as the skies have opened as if they are doors. But this is referring to, of course, a future event, the Day of Judgment, and Allah Ta'ala is using the madi to express that لِتَحَقُّقِ الْوُقُوع, the certainty of their occurrence. إِسْتِمْرَارُ الْأَسْمَاء, as opposed to af'al, we know that the asma will give the fa'idah of continuity, that يا أيها الإنسان إنك كادح إلى ربك, you are in a constant toil. كادح, not يكدح or يكدح. I still haven't looked up what exactly the fi'il is, if it's what bab it's on, but that this, you are in a constant toiling towards your Lord. إنك كادح إلى ربك كدحا فملاقيه. Okay, and then different meanings of, let's see, is there another example of istimrar al-asma? I think the other example I gave was Surah Al-Buruj. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ فَتَنُوا الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. Allah Ta'ala, He says that indeed those in Surah Al-Buruj, that those individuals who have tested and put through trial, fatanu, that they have put through trial the al-mu'minin wal-mu'minat. Allah Ta'ala uses the ism fa'il form, that the very strong believing men and women. So the ism, the usage of the ism will give the benefit of them, Allah Ta'ala's ascribing this act of iman to them in a very strong use, in a very strong sense. Okay, different meanings of a fi'il when used with a sila. Okay, so an easy example is, or actually, okay, never mind. I thought of a different example, but it doesn't really work. The da'a is a very easy example to illustrate this. The da'a lahu, da'a alayhi, and da'a ila. When you say da'utu lahu, I made dua for that person, that Allah, that you're seeking blessings for an individual. Da'utu alayhi, you're seeking curses against an individual, and da'utu ila is who exactly you are making dua towards. And lastly, we have the principle of Al-Qur'an yufassiru ba'duhu ba'da. That some portions of the Qur'an, they explain other portions. For example, Surah Al-Inshiqaq, we have the some, like just one or two, three ayat about the some description about what happens when the people are distributed their books. And then in Surah Al-Haqqa, we find much, much more detail. وَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ فَيَقُولُ هَاؤُمُ اقْرَءُوا كِتَابِيَهْ. That the individual who's given the book in their right hand, they're going to be super excited. They're going to say, they're going to look around to the people and say, like out of ta'ajjub, out of their amazement, out of being as completely astounded, that they're going to ask people to read their books because they're just so happy. Okay, so that's just one example. وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ was another example, but inshallah we could suffice with that. We also discussed the concept of naskh, which is, of course, the abrogation that is found in the Quran. This is a very important subject, especially in ahkam, because sometimes there's going to be verses regarding some legal rulings that change later on in the future. Now, the ishkal of non-Muslims or whoever can be that it seems like Allah Ta'ala is correcting a mistake. Or they'll just say that this is a proof that this book is not divine and that this is from the hawa, na'udhu billah, of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that he's just making stuff up. But we see that this is also, we read the narration of the Jews also making this similar statement to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that, he's just giving fatwa on one desire one day, and then he decides to change his mind. But then Mufti Taqi, as he says, but the objection raised by the Jews is quite superficial, and if we ponder a little, we could see the mistake. Abrogation does not mean a change in views, but it implies issuing orders according to the needs of another time. It is not for the abrogator to declare the abrogated as wrong, but it is to fix the time limit for the enforcement of the first order and to tell that the first order was just and proper for the time it remained in force. But now a new order is being enforced according to changed circumstances. Whoever would think it over in a reasonable frame of mind would have no difficulty in arriving at the conclusion that this change is exactly in keeping with the infinite wisdom the infinite wisdom of Allah Ta'ala. Okay. It cannot be questioned in any way. He would not be a doctor in the true sense if he uses the same prescription under all the circumstances and for every disease. Meaning it's necessary at times to make changes to the law and to what's being issued. Similarly, I also shared the narration of Aisha radiallahu anha, where she says that if the prohibition of zina and the prohibition of wine and these things was to be set out on day one, she said no one would have become Muslim because it just would have been too hard for them. The example of, I believe his name was Jamaluddin al-Qasimi, was it's like a child, and then a child eventually becomes a young teenager, then a young adult, then an old man. So then the responsibilities and expectations change. So in the beginning of Islam, the people were like children in terms of their iman and that's the analogy. And eventually they grow and they're able to handle more and they're able to take on more and they're able to just whatever Allah Ta'ala and His Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam say, they're able to adopt it readily. But it was because of that process of building themselves through the successive laws that Allah Ta'ala revealed. That is why the people were able to readily accept the commandments of Allah Ta'ala. Okay, so that's naskh. We had one more discussion, which was qira'at. Qira'at. So the qira'at. Why are there different qira'at? I've only heard one way of reciting Quran. How is it possible that there is different ways of reciting Quran? Okay, so now how can we prove that there's such a thing as qira'at? Okay, well, it's not something that you could just like sit down and like logically deduce, right? You can't just like sit down and be like, yeah, there must have been like seven different ways to recite Quran, and then it also makes sense that three more just came, and then we added those on, and then three became 10, and it kind of makes sense that each one of these 10 qaris had two rawis who preserved the reading of the teachers of that specific teacher, and so on. Okay, it's not something that's logically deduced, nor is it something that you could derive through the senses. So that leaves the avenue of khabar. So these are the three avenues that have like epistemic weight in our Sharia. Many scholars of Aqidah mentioned this in the beginning of their books, Sabuni, Nasafi. Well, they mentioned that the Hawas al-Salima, the the sensoria, the five senses, are a valid method of deducing, of gaining knowledge, as well as aql mujarrad. The intellect is another way to gain knowledge. The third, I think the second way in the listing is usually the khabar. And khabar breaks up into two things, which is mutawatir khabar, as well as the khabar of a nabi. Of course, if you straight up meet a prophet and he was to tell you something and you know for 100% fact that he's a prophet, then there's no possibility that it's a lie. There's no possibility that he's wrong, correct? That if he was to tell you something, then that's it. That gives you qat'i knowledge. It gives you 100% definitive knowledge that cannot possibly be wrong. If a prophet tells you something, okay? So, for example, when the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum would hear something directly from the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that's it. That's 100% qat'i, definitive, demonstrative knowledge. Okay, well, we don't have that benefit, unfortunately, to be in the presence of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But there's another way to also gain qat'i 100% definitive knowledge, and that is what we call khabar mutawatir. Khabar mutawatir is that narration, it is that information that is passed person from person, which is so profound in number that it is not possible that all these individuals concocted a lie, nor they all made the same mistake. One thing to mention is, Arslan, I think you brought this up, is that it must be that this number of people be through each generation. So now, what's probably like one of the most famous hadith in the world is إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, correct? But we see that, like it became very, okay, I'm forgetting the narrator's name, but only like, we have the sanad, which gives each name from person to person until it reaches, like, I guess, so Imam Bukhari heard it from this individual, who heard it from this individual, who heard it from this individual, who heard it from this sahabi, who heard it from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's only after like 4 or 5 people that the hadith like really became like super duper famous. And in all the other generations above Imam Bukhari's teacher, okay, so Imam Bukhari heard it from an individual, and that's like the individual who's kind of like the main person who really brought fame to that hadith, I guess you could say. So, meaning what? Meaning that although the hadith is like super duper famous, but it's not mutawatir. Why? Because of the above generations only being singular, or not singular, but there's just not as many people as that are needed to make a khabar mutawatir. Meaning that there's like not just one person per generation, there's multiple people per generation, but it's not enough to make it mutawatir. It has to be a large number of people to make it mutawatir. Again, regarding what's the precise number to make like a narration mutawatir, that's deferred upon as well. One more thing that I want to say was and then, okay, so what I was going to say about the inama amal bin niyat is that the talaqqi of the ummah could also, the fact that the ummah and the entire, like all the scholars and like everyone agrees that this is like something that is established in our religion is also a separate proof to the authenticity to the hadith, which we won't get into right now. But yes, it would be a khabar mutawatir that has been accepted by the ummah. Okay, anyway, where was I going with that? Okay, so qira'at. So how would we prove qira'at? It would have to be through this avenue of, okay, if it's not the hawas, if it's not the senses, the 5 senses, and if it's not aql, it has to be through this avenue of khabar. Now, khabar, as we said, it has to 100% definitive knowledge is only gained through the khabar mutawatir. So now this is the khabar in which all the qira'at with their riwayat and their turuq have been transmitted to us from the time of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam all the way down to today. And we have the asanid for this, and that has been documented by many people. And inshallah, if you guys want more detail regarding the asanid, this will be something good for me to look up and share as well. So we could do that maybe. I probably should have done that before class, if anything. But yeah, that would be the method of proving it, is that there is so many different chains of narrations which prove the establishment of the different methods of reciting in different qira'at. Now, what's the point of the different qira'at? One of the main things is for taysir, as we see in many of the different narrations of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which we went through the other day, is that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he would, in ummati la tutiqu dhalik, he would say to Jibril alayhi salam that, when Jibril alayhi salam would read to him in one variation, I guess if you want to call it, one qira'ah, okay, that he would say that, like my ummah needs more, like, uh, like a bigger scope and more ways to read, and that was because he just wanted to make it easier for the people. He also complained that in his nation, in his ummah, there is old people, there's old women, there's children. So meaning what? It's going to be difficult for them to read in just one specific way. So for that reason, again, there was taysir, there was ease that was brought in this matter of being able to recite Quran, and all of them are, as we know from the hadith of Uthman ibn Affan when he was standing on the minbar, and he said that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he recited the Quran in different ahruf, in different variations. Kulluha kafin wa shaf. That all of them are sufficient and they're all considered Quran and they all suffice for in terms of recitation. And a lot of the Sahaba that were amongst his congregation, they all stood up and they all testified to this as well. So this is something that is established through both the turuq, it's established through the ijma as well. Even if, like, let's take this argument of, I think I forgot who I said this to. This might have been to when I was teaching one of the weekend classes to the FHEEM program. I think that's what it's called. Let's say that there was no hadith about udhiyah. Let's say there was no hadith about, or like, let's say there was no ayahs about like salah. Let's say there was no hadith about like zohar, like salat al-zuhr. Would you say then that, okay, there's no nas for this? There's no such thing as people. There's no Quranic ayah, nor is there a hadith about praying dhuhr, about praying salah at 1:30, right? Would that be a valid argument, or is there any other way that we could establish salat al-dhuhr? Another way to establish it would be the amal al-ummah, the fact that we know that the Sahaba have done it. We know that the Tabi'een have done it. We know that all of the scholars have said that it's fard. It's not like they're doing a bid'ah. This would mean that, okay, the fact that there's ijma', the fact that there is, how would you translate ijma'? Consensus, right? I think that's the word. There's the fact that there's consensus on this matter shows that although the hadith or the ayah, okay, well, not the ayah, although the hadith may not have reached us, the fact that there is ijma' on this, although even though it itself is a separate proof, but this also alludes to the fact that although the hadith haven't reached us, they still exist. Does that make sense? Meaning ijma'. Okay, my point is that ijma' itself is a proof, and this has been the act the qira'at itself is proven through ijma'. Okay, that's qira'at. Okay, now three discussions, two discussions to have. One is the woman's obligation to work in the home and the whole abortion discussion. The abortion discussion, I'm actually looking forward to a lot right now, and I'm excited to go through it with you guys. The woman's obligation to work in the home. The reason that these two are brought up right now, the woman's obligation to work in the home is actually has nothing to do with our 30th bara stuff. It's the reason it came up is because I had mentioned that there's two issues. I'm sure there's more, but there's two issues that people really misconstrue and they misquote and they're just wrong regarding what exactly is our deen stance on these two issues. The first is abortion. People think that, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail today, about how there's a divide between abortion before 120 days and abortion after 120 days, and some of the rulings and stuff regarding that. And they say that okay, well, because of some of the exceptions that are given before the abortion before 120 days, they kind of paint the whole mas'ala as, Islam allows abortion all throughout, which is incorrect. Inshallah, we'll talk more about that today. Second thing is that the women's obligation to work in the home. They also say that, yeah, there's nothing that proves that Islam doesn't, like, legally or anything require that a woman work in the home. So now, which we'll have these two discussions now. Why is this so zoomed in? One second. Let me try this. Open. 14. Sorry, I had opened it full screen, and I guess when I made it like half my screen, it kind of went to like a different. Okay, great. Got that one. 3113 it was. Wow. Sorry, just 1 second. Okay, great. Okay, so there's two narrations that I would like to share with you guys regarding. I think this the talking about the woman's obligation thing will probably inshallah be shorter. So let's just go through that first. So there's regarding the whole women having to work at home and what exactly is our stance on that. So there's two narrations that I want to share with you guys, and then maybe we can go over what you guys see, some of the differences that you guys see between the two narrations. So they're both um, I think this first one you guys have probably heard of, which is regarding how Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, sorry, where she complained about some of the housework, and she asked Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam to give her a like a maid servant, like a slave girl, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam he told her, "Shall I tell you a thing which is better than what you asked me for? When you go to your bed, before you sleep, make sure to say Allahu Akbar 33 times, 34 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, and Subhanallah 33 times. This is better for you than what you have requested." Are you guys familiar with this hadith? This is the famous hadith about Tasbih Fatimi. So this is when, let me just summarize it one more time, that Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, she complained of what she suffered from the hand mill and from grinding the wheat and the flour and stuff. When she got the news that some slave girls of the spoils of war had been brought to the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, she went to him to ask for a slave, but she could not find him and told Aisha radiallahu ta'ala of her need. So when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam came, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha informed Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam of that his daughter was requesting for a maid. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he came to their house, and when we had gone to our beds. On seeing the Prophet, we were going to get up, but he said, "Keep at your places." And then he said, "Shall I tell you a thing which is better for you?" And then he prescribed the dhikr, that you should say Allahu Akbar 34 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, and Subhanallah 33 times. So that's the first narration. Okay, now here's the second narration, and then we could discuss some of the differences between the two. So Asma radiallahu ta'ala anha, the daughter of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, reported that she was married. I think that's supposed to be a typo. Okay, that she was married to Zubayr. He had neither land nor wealth nor a slave nor anything except a, I don't know what that word is. BOM. BOM. I don't want to say it out loud. NSA gonna start listening. She further said, "I grazed his horse, provided fodder to it. I looked after it. And ground dates for his camel. Besides this, what is that word, dude? Okay, besides this, I grazed the camel, made arrangements for providing it with water, and patched up the leather bucket and kneaded the flour. But I was not proficient in baking the bread, so my female neighbors used to bake bread for me, and they were sincere women." She further said, "I was carrying on my head the stones of the dates." Okay, let's. It's pretty long, so let me just. Okay, so she said that. She said, "I left the life of hardship until Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anh sent afterwards a female servant who took upon herself the responsibility of looking after the horse, and I felt as if she had emancipated me." Okay, so just one more time. Let me just summarize it one more time. That this Asma, the daughter of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, she was married to Zubayr, and he wasn't very rich, and she was taking care of the horse, she was feeding it, she was looking after it, she was like, probably like maintaining it, like its upkeep and all those things. She would grind dates for the camel. She grazed. She took the camel out to the field to let it graze on the grass. She provided it with water. She would patch up the leather buckets. She would knead the flour. She would bake. She would do all these things. But in this situation, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam or Abu Bakr Siddiq, they didn't say, "Do your 34 times Allahu Akbar, do 33 times Alhamdulillah, do 33 times Subhanallah." So now, what is the difference between the two? that maybe you guys could have picked up on? Why is it in one? My question is, why is it in one situation was she given the servant, the slave girl, and the other one wasn't? You're very very close. I mean, I could argue that it was strenuous for both of them. My God, mashallah, perfect. So that's the main thing, is that the work that Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha was complaining about was that it was the housework, about, like, of cooking really cooking. And I think probably in some other narrations where it gives more detail, but it was housework that was inside the house, which is why Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam prescribed her with the dhikr as opposed to a servant. Whereas this Asma radiallahu ta'ala anha, she was going out the house, she was taking care of the animal, she was taking it to the pastures, and on top of that, she was, as she says, she was kneading the flour and she was baking the bread, but she just wasn't very good at it, so her neighbors helped her out with that. That's the main difference that is seen here. So now let me just read some of my notes from Mufti Saab's class. Okay. I remember I was writing like crazy this day. It's like all in between the hashiyas. You guys want to see? Let me. I want to flip this around. So this is Dora handwriting right here, writing in between the hashiyas. Yeah, it's already like super small over there. That's why point 0.5 lead pencils are just so goaded. Anyways, so is khidma wajib on the wife? So first off, it is ridiculous to suggest that there's nothing which suggests a woman has to do household chores. You said that's ridiculous. At least two of the four madhahib have opinions in the madhab saying that it is wajib on her, and these are legit opinions. So it's not like a desi thing to say, basically to say that the woman has to do the housework. So what's obligated and what isn't? So we've seen ourselves that it is the woman who does household khidmah, as we see here. So now the feminists will argue that that is an injustice. Okay, so by that reasoning, that means that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam observed an injustice his entire life, and not only did he not stop it, he encouraged it. Because what's the hadith of Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha? He's not telling her to stop doing the housework. He's telling her to, like, do the dhikr so you can get more strength to do it. He's encouraging it, right? Okay, so additionally, we have the hadith of Jabir radiallahu ta'ala anhu, where he was a young man, and his father had passed away, and he had multiple sisters. He had, like, I think some narrations mentioned 6, and some others mentioned 9. Okay, it was a large number. Is my point. And when he got married, he made sure to marry. He didn't marry like a. He was a young man, let's say like in his 20s. He made sure to marry a woman that was much older than him. Why? Because he said that when he was asked regarding, like, why did you marry, why did you marry that particular woman, he said that, I mean, I have young sisters who need basically like a mother figure in their life to look after them, so that's why I married them. So we see from that hadith too that the woman then was being like the one who's going to take care of the family household and the kids and stuff. Okay, so proofs. كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. One sec. Are you guys familiar with this narration? Very, very famous. كلكم راع. Okay, perfect. كلكم عن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said that all of you are in a state, all of you are responsible over something. And وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته, and you're all going to be subject to, you're all going to be basically questioned for those things that you were responsible for. والأمير راع والرجل راع على أهل بيته. So the ruler of a country, he's a guardian, and he's, of course, that ruler is going to be asked about his responsibility as like a king, and how did you handle the state affairs and stuff like that, the economy and all these different things and policies and all that. وَرَجُلُ رَاعٍ عَلَى أَهْلِ بَيْتِهِ, and a man, the head of the man, he's basically the head of the household. رَاعٍ عَلى أَهْلِ بَيْتِهِ, he's the head of the household, and Okay, so now if we extend the syllogism, وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته وكل رجل um, مسؤول عن أهل بيته. That every single man will be questioned about how did he handle his family affairs. والمرأة راعية على بيت زوجها وولده. That the woman is also responsible for her husband's house and his offspring. So again, we see that the inside of the house chores or whatever you want to call that responsibilities are being attributed to the woman here in this narration. Second proof is the hadith that we mentioned asking for a slave girl to help her take care of the inside chores, which again we just talked about. So now the Hanafiya and the Malikiya understand that Asma radiallahu ta'ala anha was doing extra kharij an al bayt. She was doing outside of the housework, meaning like the horse work, really, in that narration. So is not the woman's responsibility. That's not the woman's responsibility. That's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave Asma radiallahu ta'ala anha a khadim, but he didn't give it to his own daughter Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha. Exceptions are if when a woman is like physically incapable, or for example, a woman whose class is that she's never worked a day in her life. Her class of people have maids and whatever. Meaning, like, there's some women who are like really, really high society. I guess this wouldn't. This still wouldn't apply to our just like regular suburban families. That like her mom takes care. Let's say like okay, so I remember someone asked this in our class too. That okay, but like a girl whose mom takes care of like the laundry, like the groceries or something, like she's never worked a day in her life. Okay, that's actually a proof for us because what are you saying? That the mother when she gets married, she's expected to do what her mother just did, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's not an argument. Um,
Question there. So a girl who grew up in a household with like a lot of maids and servants and stuff like that. Is
like
that what's
royalty. Yeah, yeah. That's sorry. What?
is that what this is referring to?
What do you mean? No,
Like,
that would be the like in terms of the fiqh. Then that falls into the whole discussion of kafa'a. Kafa'a is when there has to be like a mutual like standing in in terms of like wealth and in terms of like respectability between a husband and a wife, and it is so legitimate. Hopefully, that be it. The Hanafi Madhab say that if there's no kafa'a, if there's no like mutual like standing between the husband and wife in terms of like their level, then that's a valid reason for like the wali, the guardian of the girl, to come in and be like and go to the qadi and be like, yeah, break this marriage up. Like we don't want this girl married to that guy. Does that,
okay.
does that make sense?
Yeah, I was asking more in terms of like if a woman like would she be required? Is that an exception for her to not do anything in her husband's house
Yeah,
if
yeah.
she brought a lot of like servants, maids, and all?
Yeah, that's my point. It's one of the exceptions. Like, it's meaning it would actually be with the responsibility of the husband to pay for like maids and stuff.
Okay.
Like,
And what are the like for you mentioned the social standing between the husband and the wife? Like what are those like what criteria defines that?
Hmm, there's three or four things. I remember we had the discussion in Hidayah. Let me just double check, then maybe I can get back to you. I'll just send it on the group or we can talk about it on Friday if that's cool with you.
Yeah, that's fine. So what you said is called kafara?
Kafa'a, yeah. Kafa'a. Okay, so I think it's, one sec. Yeah, it's these four things. They would have to be kafa'a fi din, kafa'a fi nasab, kafa'a fi mal, and kafa'a fi sana'a wal hirfa. Kafa'a fi din is, of course, there has to be like a mutual. Like, I don't know. You guys know what I'm saying. You guys get what I mean by kafa'a, right? I know I'm not picking the best English word for it, but like it has to be like a mutual. It has to be like a almost like equal, like a balance in in deen, in nasab, in mal, and in sana'a. Like there has to be it's not like for example like the wife can't be super duper duper rich, or like she can't be from like a really really like great lineage, and then the husband be like, like a nobody. Meaning that would be a valid ground for like the father of like this girl who just like ran off or something and she got married. Like it would be valid grounds for him to be like, yeah, Ali Saab, just break this marriage up. You know what I'm saying? So the four things are deen, like their his piety, or his and her piety, in their nasab, in their lineage, in their mal, in their wealth, in their money, and in sana'a and hirfa, like occupation and their job, I guess. Yeah, those are the four things.
When it comes to wealth, what is like the deterrent there? Like, is there a difference noted? Sorry, I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but it's kind of very
As
interesting.
it was like, what's the
Like, what define like what is like the magnitude of difference in economic class for marriage for this to like not work?
hmm. Honestly, I'm forgetting what's the exact like the line, I guess, or like the standard. I would assume that most likely this is according to urf. This is according to like the each time and place. So that the muftis and the qadis of that time will have the discretion to decide what exactly that is.
Okay. And why did you say Sana'a and hair colors?
Occupation, work, job. Yeah, I think even like no detail though on this. Like, whatever. Anyway, I'll look into that more, see if there's any more detail that's mentioned. But I'm assuming that it's pretty much it's up to like the muftis and qadis of the specific time and place to determine that. Okay, so are we done with this? Let me see what else I have written down here. Okay, yeah. So then the thing that I mentioned when I first just casually brought this up for whatever reason. So okay, just because some hukuk and some responsibilities aren't spelled out, that doesn't mean one should say that, oh, where does it say I have to do this? Where does it say I have to do that? That's ridiculous. People are presenting these things like, that's not my responsibility, or that's un Islamic to ask her to do or that. Okay, so in the madhab, okay, that's not the case. So in the madhab, in the Hanafi madhab, the earliest scholars say that it is not wajib, but Samarqandi, the 4th century scholar, Abu Layth as-Samarqandi, he says that the difference is between wajib being something diyanatan and qada'an. Diyanatan and qada'an. I think I had mentioned this before too. Diyanatan being that something that she will be sinful for in the hereafter, but she will not be taken to task for it in the court of law. Qada'an being something that the qadi, the judge, like like the judge in a courtroom can decide for or against. So we're saying that if the husband was to go, like Hanafi husband and wife was to go to a Hanafi qadi and says that like she's not doing her housework, then the qadi can't really do much and can't enforce it. Whereas diyanatan, she will be responsible. Okay. So same with the Malikiya. So some Hanabila have this opinion. The Shafi'is pretty much across the board do not consider the wife to have any responsibilities. The Shafi'iyya consider that the wife across the board pretty much does not have any responsibilities. Again, this doesn't mean that it's haram. Notice that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't do islah of Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, but readily did whatever. Okay, you guys get the point. Great. Okay, we have 16 minutes for the whole abortion thing. Let's see how this goes, inshallah. Any questions so far about qira'at, about naskh, about this discussion we just had, about تقديم ما حقه تأخير يفيد الحصر.
So I have a question.
Yes.
If you want to marry a woman of a different um madhab, so is this like how is it?
Yeah, Lee. If you wanted to marry a woman of a different madhab, how would you? Could you finish that?
Navigate this conversation.
About? Oh, like if you wanted to marry as a Hanafi, I will always recommend that you do tahnif, that you make her a Hanafi as well. um, how would you? I have no idea. I don't know. How would you? I don't know. You gotta ask some like trained mufti for this one. You gotta ask Mufti bin Hajj for this one. He'll give you the proper answer. MashaAllah. His experience, all of his experience of like run of dealing with community members under his belt, yeah, he could give you an answer. I'm just joking about the tahnif thing, by the way. Masha, all the four madhab are jais to follow. And I hope so go ahead, inshallah. Um, it is. I would suggest though, from the four madhab, always probably just follow the people in your area if you don't have access to anyone else. I remember someone had asked me this question, and I don't think I gave this answer. But now that I think about it, if let's say there's like a 1 year student who like his whole community is like Shafi'i or okay, and he just doesn't have the ability to like keep up with Hanafi scholars, then it might be best for that person to just become a Shafi'i, and that way he has access to credible Shafi'i scholars. I don't know where that came from. Anyways, um, I usually so messed up. I usually just say that whenever someone's not a Hanafi, and I tell them that you're in the DS community, just become a Hanafi, dude. Anyways, and, but I mean, I think the logic is sound. That if you obviously if it's someone who's not following the four madhahib, then yeah, then go out of your way to reach out to scholars who follow one of the four madhahib, and inshallah that'll be better for you. Anyway, we also have to have a discussion about following madhahib, don't we? Anyways, I'm sure you guys probably talked about that in first year. As for the abortion discussion, let's just jump right into it. Two different things to talk about is some of the rulings related to um, like contraceptives and contraceptives and abortion in our deen, as well as we have to have like some of the aqli argument as to why is abortion something that's wrong. This is a huge heated discussion in like American politics today, where you have the right versus the left, pro-life, pro-choice, and all that stuff. So why is it wrong? What is our understanding of it? And yes, so let's discuss. We can start with the maybe the like the fatwas and some of the ahkam regarding birth control and abortion in Islam. That paper that I had shared, I think I wrote it in maybe fifth year. I'm assuming sixth year probably. That's when I was like really getting into like Jordan Peterson and like Ben Shapiro and those guys, and I was pulled into like the gateway of conservative American conservatism. But then I think because of this whole thing that's going on now in Philistine, it kind of like showed me that like these guys are off the rails, dude. And then yeah, so then now I think I've settled down quite a bit off of those guys. I am a fan of Ben Shapiro's arguments in for pro life. I think he does a very good job in that specific argument, as well as the transgenderism stuff. A lot of the right wing people have similar, if not the same, views as our conservative um, views on these issues regarding like some issues of morality and stuff like that. So it's fine to take those and listen to those and whatnot. Some things, of course, we need to be cautious of, and inshallah, maybe we could talk about that now in this discussion. So, you guys want to talk about the aqli thing first, or the like the as to why is it wrong? And this is obviously something that's very pertinent to our setting. Or we could just talk about some of the I summarized Mufti Muhammad ibn Alam al Kawthari's work really quick, like very, very short. And then I remember I was summarizing it, and then I got to the end, and then I realized that he summarized it in 10 points, and I was like, okay, like, okay, that was well, it took like a day, not even, so it's not a big deal. Okay, any preference? No? Okay, I'll just go through this. Okay. So, birth control and abortion in Islam, Mufti Muhammad ibn Adam al-Kawthari, part 1, birth control in Islam. So, irreversible contraceptives like vasectomies for males and sterilization, tubal ligation, or this is a typo. It says tube tiny. I forgot I don't know what the word was. For females are strictly forbidden, haram. Qiyasan onto Could one of you guys, Arslan, could you go to that picture that I had sent a couple of, I think maybe like a week ago, regarding the 10 points? And then can you just read off number one, two, three, four, and then basically we could just use that as like the matan, as the text, and then I'll just give the a bit more. That's like a really, really like 1 or 2 line summarization of his entire book, like into 10 points. So he basically gives like 10 sets. Yeah.
Okay, should I just read it now?
Yeah, go ahead. Number one.
One of the primary objectives of marriage is procreation. Children are a source of mercy granted by Allah Most High and are a means of coolness for the parents' eyes.
Jesus.
Thus, in general, one should abstain from practicing birth control if there is no valid reason to do so.
Okay, great. Number two.
There are two types of contraceptive methods: irreversible and reversible. The irreversible method is carried out by a sterilization operation known as a vasectomy on the male and a tubectomy on the female. Reversible contraception refers to the employment of the various temporary methods of contraception, such as coitus interruptus, also known as azan, oral contraceptive pills, condoms, intrauterine devices, injections, and spermicidal deliveries.
Okay, so he talks about irreversible and reversible contraceptives. So irreversible things, like we said, vasectomy, sterilization, are strictly forbidden. Haram. Is that the wording he uses? Yes. Okay. So now, why is that? It is qiyasan onto castration. This is basically the way that we're deriving this ruling is because of castration. Castration is when you, like in the olden times, I believe, even in the hadith, it would come that they would like mutilate themselves, their private parts, so that they couldn't like their bodies wouldn't produce sperm, and basically their sexual desire would completely go away, and that was forbidden. So now, for the same reason, irreversible contraceptives like sterilization, vasectomies are mutilation in a sense. Although it's not as grotesque or something because it's like done very neatly and properly or whatever you want to call it. It's the exact same thing as castration because it is not allowing the body to produce the natural sexual fluid for the male. Okay, so that is going to be completely haram. As for in the now, in the case of necessity, a woman whose health/life is endangered if she were to have more children, birth naturally, or any other case deemed by a competent Muslim doctor, may be permitted to undergo irreversible sterilization if no alternative is available. Literally, like the most dire need, then perhaps this irreversible contraceptive for a woman may be permissible so that she could still have intercourse, but not get pregnant, pretty much. As for reversible contraceptives like condoms, birth control pills, so on and so forth, how do we know that these are permissible? Is because of what you said, coitus interruptus, which is to remove basically is to just not ejaculate inside of the female before the man feels like he's about to ejaculate, this is called coitus interruptus, and this is something that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam allowed. Therefore, we see that if we extend the logic, other reversible contraceptives, just like how making sure not to ejaculate inside of the female is allowed, other reversible contraceptives will also be allowed. Make sense? Okay. And then he gives, what's the next one? Next point?
It was basically the same thing. Number three is irreversible contraception is totally unlawful, although it may be permitted in certain dire and compelling situations. Four is reversible contraception is considered to be somewhat disliked, makruh tanzihan, if practiced without a need, and permissible if practiced due to a need. And then he goes into the Maliki school. This permissibility is only for individual and personal needs, thus to strive for population control can never be permissible under Islamic law or principles.
Okay. As for a bit more detail about like azal and other reverse azal, as we said, the coitus interruptus, which is removing the male private part from the female private part before ejaculation. The upshot of the above is that azal and other reversible contraceptions in general is by and large permissible in the Hanafi school with the wife's consent. As the reason that you need the wife's consent before a man is to ejaculate inside the wife is because she has the right to children. So he would need her permission. Although slightly disliked. The reason it's slightly disliked is because of a separate hadith which kind of alludes to it being disliked. But because we saw that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam allowed for it to happen, we know that it's still okay to do. Like it's not like it's completely haram because of that one hadith. So the consent of the spouse is necessary in normal circumstances and may be overlooked in certain situations, such as the spouse being religiously corrupt, the husband intending to divorce the wife, or the wife intending to seek a divorce from her husband. or the couple being in hostile territory and other such situations. Furthermore, if a reversible form of contraception was practiced for a genuine reason, its undesirability, the makruh tanzihi aspect of it, would no longer remain and it would be totally permissible, like some of the things that we just mentioned above. Mufti Shafi, he then gives some of the acceptable reasons. He gives a few. He says when a divorce is likely, when she is in an area of no stability or security, or when the woman is too weak when the woman is too ill or weak to sustain pregnancy. Other reasons would be to space out the children, to give proper tarbiyah, or when a woman is forced to work out of unavoidable and desperate circumstances. As we said, the woman does not have to work according to the Hanafi. She has to just take care of the household stuff. And the outside chores are not her responsibilities, right? Like, and that includes working. Okay, so practicing contraception out of fear of poverty or any other non-Sharia compliant reason is impermissible. Okay, and Allah Ta'ala speaks about this in the Quran. What's the ayah? Okay, Allah Ta'ala talks about this, that the believing man and woman, they shouldn't have fear that, Allah Ta'ala is the one who provides. So the fear of poverty should not be a reason. Because that's like, that's like testing your aqidah, because you're assuming that you're the one that's like, that puts you in a bad spot. Okay, as for what's the next point, Arslan?
Abortion, forms of reversible contraception that prevent pregnancy after the egg has been fertilized, such as the morning after pill, will not be permitted except in certain limited medical circumstances.
Okay, so now this is where, even in our Islamic tradition, it seems like there is differences of opinions. However, I will argue for one opinion strongly, and it is not this opinion that is being mentioned here. And don't just be. I know how that sounds. This is like, bro, this is Mufti Muhammad ibn Amr al-Kawthari, and I'm like, I'm a nobody, bro. But like, I think the logic of my argument, I feel like stands. And I know there's a lot of other scholars who, not other scholars. There's a lot of scholars who also hold the opinion of what I'm also for. Perhaps this is my bias of pretty much just hearing this argument from like a conservative right wing standpoint, but I think that some of these issues that we'll mention now, I don't think they should be allowed, even though that over here he says that they should be allowed. As for the ruling on employing the loop or the morning after pill, but let's just stick to what he says, because at least this is a valid opinion of a solid mufti. Well, as for the ruling on employing the loop or the morning after pill, and now what's the difference between this and like condoms or birth control pills or vasectomies? Okay, the reason that this is different is because this is a method which removes the fertilized egg. Of course, if a man is wearing a condom, then the sperm does not reach the egg, and the egg does not become fertilized with the sperm. A vasectomy will not allow that whole process to even happen. The morning after pill and these things, they remove the fertilized egg, which sperm has now met the egg of the woman, and the egg has been fertilized, and it could potentially grow into a human being, into a 9-month baby, and it could come out of the mother and become a proper child and everything, all that stuff. The morning after pill and these things, although there is some different, even medical opinion as to what exactly is the function of like Plan B and morning after pills and those things, but he's saying that it would be. He says that reversible contraception is generally permitted with a slight degree of dislike, while employing any method that may prevent a fertilized egg from implanting itself into the womb will not be allowed except in certain medical and health situations, examples of which are given in the coming section on abortion. Actually, never mind. We do agree on this one. Okay, so my fault. I think it's some of the other later opinions. Sorry, my fault. Let me just rephrase. Let me just say this again because I was talking a lot. So he's saying that once the egg has been fertilized, to use things like the morning after pill or the loop, as he says, I'm not sure exactly what that is. I know what the morning after pill is that to use any of these would not be allowed because you'd be removing a fertilized egg, which has the potentiality to become a human being, and you would pretty much be excreting that out of the womb, which would cause it to die and not allow it to develop further. That's why it would not be allowed. Does that make sense? the difference between the two? So now we have three classes. We have reversible contraception, irreversible, like vasectomies. Well, over here we have condoms, vasectomies, and now we have this morning after pill. The morning after pill is not allowed. Why? Because it is removing a fertilized egg where the sperm has met the egg, and it could now, if as with natural processes, it will become a fetus and become to develop into a 9 month baby. Anyways, now as for abortion. Abortion can be of two types: after the soul has entered the fetus and before the soul has entered the fetus. When does the soul enter the fetus? We say 4 months, and which is 4 months or 120 days. This is due to the ayah in Surah Al-Mu'minun as well as a hadith in Sahih Bukhari 3036. 3036. Did I share this with you guys? I did, right? I shared the abortion document like an hour, 2 hours ago.
Yes.
Okay, so once the fetus reaches 120 days and the soul has been blown into the fetus, abortion is haram and tantamount to murder, as the fetus now has life. Okay? If, I'm sure we could all agree, anyone kills a human being without justification, like for example out of self-defense or had or something like that, it is murder, first degree murder. Agreed? Yes, it is tantamount to murder. Okay, so to kill a fetus after 120 days in which life has now been blown into it, then because now that fetus has life, it is tantamount to murder. Now, uh, the ishkal will be that, okay, well, it's not a person yet or all that stuff, which inshallah we'll discuss uh, in the. Right now, we're just talking about like some of the legal rulings, as like what the fiqh behind abortion and stuff like that. We'll talk more about like the aqli arguments, like the logical proof as to why abortion is murder and the taking of a life and all that stuff later on, inshallah. It's 9:01. We could stop here, inshallah, and yeah, I'll end off with this. All four madhahib are unanimous that the fetus cannot be aborted after 120 days. Could you just read maybe where maybe I've been going ahead too much, Arsalan. If you could just read the.
Point number 8 is abortion prior to 120 days of pregnancy will also be unlawful, but he goes into that's before. But you covered point 7, carrying out an abortion after 120 days is totally unlawful by consensus and is considered to be murder.
Okay, perfect. So, inshallah, we could pick up here from Friday. And I think this, I guess we won't be starting from Surah Al-Fajr. Sorry. But yeah, as for I know we barely got into it, but inshallah, just save your questions for this is like a hot topic. That's why I want to make sure we just do this properly, inshallah. And again, I'm very excited to go through this one with you guys, inshallah. So inshallah, we could talk more about it on Friday. All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Any questions? No?